Good afternoon. Welcome to today's View from the Top, our final event for the spring semester. Hosted by the College of Engineering, our View from the Top speaker series gives our college and campus community to hear from the best of today's global leaders and technology visionaries. I'd like to thank the Society of Women Engineers and our Campus Office of Government and Community Relations for sponsoring today's lecture with the College of Engineering. Thank you. Before I introduce our Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, George Breslauer, who will introduce our distinguished speaker, I'd like to underscore the importance of today's topic, cybersecurity. As you all know, securing the trustworthiness and security of our global and national cyber and physical infrastructures is absolutely pivotal to our way of life. This, in my opinion, is a top priority for the United States and the international community as a whole. We at Berkeley have been playing a leadership role in this crucial area. One example is our Trust Research Center, funded by the National Science Foundation and the Department of Homeland Security. TRUST stands for the Team for Research in Ubiquitous Secure Technologies, and the Department of Homeland Security sponsors a cybersecurity test bed called DETER. It's been established since 2005. It's a multi-campus educational and research consortium, including several partners, both in academia and industry, headquartered at Berkeley. I'm proud to serve as the faculty director of TRUST, and I'm delighted to see a lot of our participating students and faculty here in the audience. The mission of the college is educating leaders, creating knowledge, and serving society. In the area of ensuring trustworthy systems, which is the topic of our discussion today, I believe our college and the entire Berkeley campus are trying their best to make a huge impact in advancing this critical area. I'd now like to introduce our Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, George Breslauer, who will introduce our special guest speaker. George.
Thank you, Shankar. I'm honored to welcome to UC Berkeley today's distinguished speaker, Janet Napolitano, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In her role, she leads our nation's efforts to secure our country from the threats we face, from terrorism to natural disasters. Prior to becoming Secretary, Ms. Napolitano was in her second term as Governor of Arizona and was recognized as a national leader on homeland security, border security, and immigration. She was the first woman to chair the National Governors Association and was named one of the top 5 governors in the country by Time magazine. Ms. Napolitano was also the first female Attorney General of Arizona. She was born in New York City, as was I, and grew up in Pittsburgh and Albuquerque. She graduated from Santa Clara University here in the Bay Area, so this is like a coming home, where she won a Truman Scholarship and was the university's first female valedictorian. She received her Doctor of Jurisprudence from the School of Law at the University of Virginia. We're very honored that Secretary Napolitano has come to Berkeley to speak to us, and I'm pleased to let you know that after her remarks, there will be time for some questions from the audience. Please write down any questions you may wish to ask her on the cards provided. Let me now invite Secretary Napolitano to share her view from the top remarks with us. Secretary.
Well, thank you, and indeed it is a delight to be back here in the Bay Area and to be here on a topic that I think is of intense importance to the future of the country and the future of our own homeland security. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to the Berkeley community for having me here today. Now, I've been on something of a college speaking tour this year. And I always enjoy being at the great universities of the country, like Cal Berkeley. Last month, I was at another university. You may have heard of MIT, speaking about a similar topic area. So I view this as kind of an East versus West, what have you, and we will see how the results obtain. Now, I began this series of remarks at universities last January at George Washington University. And there I gave an address on the overall state of our Homeland Security. And I said then that we were better prepared than we were prior to 9/11 in terms of interdiction, prevention, and response. And then that we are better prepared than we were 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and 6 years ago, 4 and 2. You get the sequence. But that does not mean that we can sit still. If these were ordinary times, what we were doing in the Homeland Security area might be good enough to say we are safe enough. But these are not ordinary times. This is a period of intense transition for the world. And indeed, terrorist threats have not gone away. They have evolved, they have diversified, and they have moved from being international in origin to being both international and domestic. And so we have to evolve as well. And we have to evolve in the ways we think about security, what it means, what this thing called Homeland Security means, how we go about it, and how we go about making sure that we have provided the maximum safety we can for the country while minimizing the risks that terrorists could indeed interrupt us and disrupt our way of life. So if you go back to 9/11, 2001, we're about ready to commemorate the 10th anniversary. I suspect some of you were, well, maybe very young, very young. But if you go back to that point in time, think about that in terms of cyber, right? We were still a few years away from the start of the Web 2.0. Social media did not exist, certainly in the ways that we conceive it and use it today. And so the whole cyber world in 10 years is a very different world now than it was. And that is a good thing, but it also carries with it now a number of different types of threats that we have to be cognizant of. The pace of innovation has accelerated. Things have become more decentralized. The methods of attack have also accelerated, and they too have become decentralized. So we have had to, at the Department of Homeland Security, step back and really for the first time in our nation's history, think of cyberspace as its own domain. As its own security domain, and what is required to protect and secure that domain. And the president recognized this shortly after taking office. He assigned people to do a complete cyber review of the federal government to analyze where roles and responsibilities should be, where the lines of authorities should go, and so forth. In that review, came out with a number of divisions. One is that for the military side of the universe, the so-called .mil, that the Department of Defense would have the lead. But for the civilian side of the government and for the intersection with the private sector, that the Department of Homeland Security would have the lead. And if you think of securing cyberspace with that basic division in mind, it makes it a little easier to decipher the federal government. And then the next key challenge was for us to ascertain how to interact with the NSA, because the technological assets of our country. Many of them are embodied within the NSA, and we're not in a position to have two of them. So the question was, how do you interact with it on the civilian side as well as in the chain of command on the military side? That question was answered via a memorandum of understanding that Secretary Gates and I executed last summer, which permits interaction or exchange between the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security, and indeed the deployment of DHS personnel at the NSA directly, as well as DHS personnel at Defense and Defense personnel at DHS. And you begin getting that cross-pollination all the time, recognizing that to the extent we, on the civilian side, are utilizing some of the assets of the NSA, we have built into it protections for privacy, protections for civil liberties, constitutional protections, and the like, things that apply on the civilian side that don't necessarily apply on the military side. And so we are now in the process of implementing that basic understanding as well. We are working hard across the government to drive changes that recognize different roles we have to play. 2 weeks ago, the President released the National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace, the so-called NStick. What it aims to do is to make online transactions more trustworthy in a simple but fundamental way by moving away from passwords and instead towards secure, reliable credentials available to consumers who want them. Instead of having to remember dozens of passwords, you have a single credential to use to log on to a website with more security than passwords alone can provide. And when you're not doing secure transactions, you can actually better protect your anonymity online. Now, dozens, if not hundreds, of companies could offer these credentials, which could be unique software on a smartphone, a smart card, or perhaps a token. You will have plenty of choices. But again, it's all about moving forward. So realize the steps that have been taken. One, recognize that cyberspace is a unique domain that deserves its own mission protection. Two, that we have to ascertain roles and responsibilities between defense and civilian. Three, we have to figure out how to use the technological resources of the NSA. Four, we have to begin providing greater protections and security for persons who are online. In another step forward, I think we will be able to see additional information available online. One thing you may have heard about, by the way, is tomorrow, and I know this will make you very sad, but tomorrow is the end of the color code system of ranking terrorism. So say goodbye to orange. It's going away. What we are substituting in its place, however, is basically a two-step type of advisory system. A risk is either elevated or imminent. The baseline is higher, meaning that we assume we are constantly at some level of risk. That unfortunately, but this is our reality, there is always someone or some group trying to attack us. So that's our base level. But if we have specific and credible information about a terrorist threat that is above that, then we would issue either an elevated alert or, in the most extreme circumstances, one that is imminent. And we will do that online, and we will do that via social media. And we will provide updated information that way. Tools not available to us 10 years ago, 8 years ago, or in some respects, 6 years ago. DHS.gov/alert for those of you that want to check out the website. Now, going back to the President and to the cyberspace policy review, there the President said, and recognize that national cyberspace is a vital economic security priority for our country. The innovations that cyberspace has enabled have driven advances in prosperity, advances in transparency and freedom, as we've seen particularly in the past few months, unimaginable just a short time ago. We have grown very dependent on digital networks, working reliably and securely as part of our day-to-day and actually our minute-by-minute lives. Without a secure cyberspace, critical infrastructure like basic utilities stop functioning, basic necessities don't make it onto our store shelves, phones fall silent, and perhaps more devastating, none of us can update our Facebook accounts, and we would find that terrible. So, seriously, if the security of our cyber networks is compromised, modern life, our economies, our systems, our networks effectively can grind to a complete halt. And that is why the Department of Homeland Security must have a clear mission and clear vision when it comes to cyber. We see cyber as part and parcel of a secure homeland. Indeed, when we set out the 5 major missions of Homeland Security, we specified cyber as its own mission set for the first time in U.S. history. 5 major missions: counterterrorism, border security, air, land, and sea, immigration enforcement, protection of cyberspace, and the ability to respond effectively and efficiently to any disaster that may occur. Now, working to create a safe, secure, and resilient cyber environment is a lot easier said than done, as you might well imagine. So we have to work with a number of partners outside of the federal government. And as the dean recognized in his opening comments, Berkeley has been a real leader and a very good partner on this front through pioneering work done here in computer science and engineering and in mathematics. The Trust Program is a terrific example of the kinds of partnerships we are seeking to foster between academia and with industry as well. We've also partnered with Berkeley on other areas, such as nuclear forensics research, and we are grateful always to tap into the resident expertise on this campus. Now, before I go into more specifics on what DHS is doing and what we plan to do to facilitate a more secure cyberspace, it's important, I think, to be clear how we as a government and as a society view it, how we view cyberspace. Because how we view it, how we approach it, plays a large role in how we go about securing it. At our department, at DHS, we believe cyberspace is fundamentally civilian space. There's no perfect metaphor with which to capture it, but as an inherently civilian space, it bears some similarities to protecting a neighborhood, a library, a marketplace, a schoolyard, a workshop. That's not to say that cyberspace is a benign space. We all know that it can facilitate exploitation, it can facilitate conflict, it can facilitate criminal activity. So just over the past year, indeed over the past weeks, we have seen the full spectrum of cyber threats, from spamming to denial of service attacks and attempts to inject dangerous pieces of spyware, among other dangers out there. Symantec, a leading cybersecurity firm, recently reported a 93% increase in cyber attacks for 2010 compared to 2009. And many of these reported incidents happened in the private sector. Earlier this year, we saw malicious attacks targeting financial institutions like NASDAQ, which are arguably among our most critical national assets. This month, a company called Epsilon, which provides email marketing to many financial services companies, reported an intrusion and compromise of its sensitive information. Internationally, the European Commission reported intrusions into all of their systems. And even renowned cybersecurity company RSA, which provides encryption and security products to a huge portion of the financial services community, also reported an intrusion and compromise of their sensitive information during the past year. And of course, now if you take cyberspace and analogize it to cities, just as all cities experience crime, so too does cyberspace. We will never be able to eliminate the risk entirely. There's always going to be something going on out there we would not like to see or do not like to see. But we think we can help minimize the risk in cyberspace by doing something called enabling distributed security, making the open nature of the internet one of its strengths. And by doing so, we can support the enormous potential of cyberspace while creating its most secure environment. So you may be asking, how do you secure a distributed, decentralized, and fundamentally civilian space when it's largely privately owned, straddles international boundaries, and has both virtual and physical elements? If you're asking yourself that, it's a very good question. We think we have two specific roles. As I said before, first protecting the .gov world, where the government does its own business and maintains its essential functions, but also provides services to the American people. Second, however, is to lead the protection of critical infrastructure and its connection to the cyberspace world. And this is something we work on every day through dividing the nation's economic sectors into 18 pieces and working with each of those 18 pieces separately. Right now, we are building what we call a technical ecosystem based on an understanding of cyberspace as a civilian distributed space and also the policy ecosystem necessary to support it. Now, I'm using that term ecosystem intentionally because like any ecosystem, cyberspace is dynamic, it is constantly changing, it is somewhat organic. We cannot treat it as static or self-contained. Just last month, we put forward a technical vision for enhancing cybersecurity that's intended to empower individuals and enterprises across cyber networks to take action to enhance secure operations. This vision has three building blocks: automation, interoperability, and authentication. So too often today, our cyber defenses are ad hoc, they are manual processes, and they are insufficient because things on the internet move very, very quickly. So we need to move to a system of automated defense with real-time detection capabilities and coordinated response. And as we all know from watching for a page to load on our computers or mobile devices, a few seconds is indeed a very long time in cyberspace. Our reaction time has to accelerate much more quickly than in any other security enforcement function. So by developing and implementing automated defenses, we can combat threats at their earliest, least costly stage and minimize their potential impact. Now, many of today's cyber systems and devices operate independently. They cannot exchange security data, and they have inconsistent security policies. For the most part, these systems were developed by private entities, fully independent of each other, and they were developed some time ago. By implementing more interoperable systems and policies from the outset, we can create a more common understanding and picture of threats and improve our ability to combat them in a coordinated fashion. And finally, our vision is built on the need for authentication. Online transactions and decisions require a level of trust and authenticity. As with any transaction, people need to have a high degree of confidence they're dealing with legitimate actors, devices, and systems. In the future, we would like to see better authentication mechanisms that protect against identity theft and spoofing, are affordable, are easy to use and administer, and are scalable and interoperable. And let me pause a moment on the word scalable. Particularly in the university environment where research is being done, I oftentimes get presented with this new thing or that new thing, and I always ask the question, Can you scale it up to deal with the entire country, indeed the entire globe? And if you can, how much is it going to cost? And who is going to bear that cost? So moving from the pure research to the application to the actual end user in the security realm oftentimes is our biggest challenge. Our overall goal is to implement this three-part vision to secure government systems and to assist the private sector and the public in securing their own cyber activities. Overall, we want to be more agile. We want to make sure that we are as safe as possible while we maximize the good that is cyberspace, such an advancement in the societies of the world. If you want to provide input on how you would organize cyberspace, if you were standing behind this podium, and someday maybe one of you will, you can email us at cyberfeedback@dhs.gov, cyberfeedback@dhs.gov. We promise to actually read your emails and to think about them, because we've actually gotten some very interesting ideas when we've gone out into the university community and spoken and approached students and asked them for their thoughts and creativity. Now, let me move on to legislation. We're working Washington, D.C. I'm the executive branch. We have an executive order. We're implementing that. We've divided up cyber responsibilities, but there's no legislation that actually reflects that division of labor. And so right now, the administration is working with the Congress, primarily the Senate right now, to put forth a legislative proposal to allow us to implement what I've discussed with you here today. Through legislation, through appropriate regulation, we want to help drive the outcomes we need as a nation and align those outcomes with the incentives that are necessary to get us there. We believe that the government rules for cyberspace should identify where we want to be and not prescribe exactly how to get there. In other words, this is your end zone, you design the play. We want to allow ample space for innovation. Our rules should be clear, fair, and broadly supported, and respect and reflect the diversity of the society in which we live. So, how are we putting some of these ideas into practice? We've set out on a path, as I've mentioned, to help build a safe cyber ecosystem that supports a secure and resilient homeland and encourages innovation and protects openness, privacy, and civil liberties by its very design. In other words, at the outset. In close partnership with other agencies and the private sector, we are deploying the National Cybersecurity Protection System, of which the Einstein intrusion system is a key component. Much like its namesake, Einstein system is smart. It helps, really smart. The Einstein system helps block malicious actors from accessing federal executive branch civilian agencies while working closely with those agencies to bolster their own defensive capabilities. Beyond .gov, we're leading the effort to protect critical information infrastructure and the systems and the networks necessary for modern society to thrive. We work with the private sector, other government agencies, and the international community every day to mitigate risks and reduce the potential that a malicious actor will be successful. So when RSA was hacked, DHS, in conjunction with law enforcement and intelligence community partners, worked with RSA to help mitigate that threat. We took our understanding of the tools, tradecraft, and techniques used by these malicious actors and converted it into actionable information. And then we sent that to all 18 critical infrastructure sectors so they could use them to deploy themselves to mitigate measures and lower their own risk to the type of attack we saw that was successful against RSA. Beyond working with critical infrastructure partners, We also partnered with antivirus companies so they could take proactive measures to stop possible threats from reaching an even broader audience. And we worked with our federal agency partners to share and disseminate indicators as widely as possible, reducing the risks to the federal government. In addition to that, we have been spearheading the development of the first ever National Cyber Incident Response Plan, or as we say in the government, the NCHIRP. But the NCHIRP enables us to coordinate the response of multiple federal agencies, state and local governments, and hundreds of private firms to incidents at all levels simultaneously. Think of the NCHIRP in the cyber world the way we have to be able to respond to natural disasters or potential terrorist attacks, where we are literally 24/7 coordinating government at all levels, working with state governments, working with the private sector, trying to minimize damage. That's what NCHIRP is, but NCHIRP is in the cyber world. We recently tested the NCHIRP during a major exercise known as Cyberstorm 3. It was a national exercise. It simulated a large-scale attack on our nation's critical information infrastructure. It involves 7 cabinet agencies, 11 states, 12 international partners, and 60 private sector companies, all of whom work together. And after that exercise, our Science and Technology Directorate and working with our cyber unit began analyzing gaps and other things that needed to be addressed so that a better response could be accomplished next time. We are also working through our Science and Tech Directorate, as I said before, on a number of ways and a number of research projects across the United States, not just at Cal Berkeley, to make sure that we are being as creative and innovative as possible where our cybersecurity issues are concerned. Now, as perhaps you can imagine, this requires personnel at the Department of Homeland Security, personnel who are educated and skilled and trained in things like counterintelligence, in things like cybersecurity, protection of cyberspace, in both the policy and the engineering underlying this whole new universe that now must be secured. We have made this a priority. Indeed, our National Cybersecurity Division within the department tripled in size in 2009, and then we doubled from that just last year. But we need more people, and here I'm talking directly to the students who are in this audience. We need a strong, innovative group of people who are willing to take on the incredible challenge that the protection of cyberspace demands, who are willing to think about a career path in public service, not just in academia or in the private sector. We've created a number of competitive scholarships, fellowships, and internship programs to help people understand what DHS is. And I will tell you at the outset, we don't have a fancy building. We're not all in one place. We're the newest department of the federal government. We're the 3rd largest department, but we're only 8 years old. But that means we're looking also for people who are willing to come in on the ground floor and build something significant and special that will be a lasting legacy for our country. Because at our department, we believe that we're at just the beginning of the protection of the cyber arena, that we don't even yet know what we don't know, and that we have to move the institutions of government in such a fashion that we can, as I said before, minimize the risk, maximize the potential, and do it protecting our fundamental values, and do it in the face of an almost daily threat environment, almost hourly threat environment that is always changing. So for the students who are thinking about, man, what am I going to do after I leave the hallowed halls of Cal Berkeley, and am I going to how am I going to spend my life? How am I going to spend my career working in an environment that is a government environment is probably a different thing that many of you thought about. But if you think about work that leads to fulfillment and leads to creating something positive to leave the next generation, I would honestly ask you to consider coming to work at the Department of Homeland Security. We also need industry, quite frankly, and here I'm talking to a few others in this room, to redouble its efforts to increase the reliability and quality of the products that they have. And we need colleges and universities to make cybersecurity a multidisciplinary pursuit so that we can get policymakers who understand technology and also technologists who understand policymaking. Let me say that again. I'm just going to pause here for just a moment. On the public policy side, we kind of know what we don't know. And we know we need technology-savvy people in the government. Well, that's why we're out here saying, come think about joining us. Come join us. Come work with us. I have not seen a similar understanding on the flip side of that, which is to say technologists understanding how policy is actually made, how change actually occurs, how new ideas actually move from idea to implementation. And so we need the academic environment to help foster that kind of understanding among our technology-educated students as well. So there are lots of challenges out there, but most importantly, we need the general public to be our partner, your partner, my partner, practicing good cyber behavior and helping us help them by making sure that they themselves are not disclosing information unnecessarily. They themselves know how to protect themselves on the internet. And those kinds of public education campaigns are also part of our challenge. So let me close with this. This is an area where we have our greatest challenges. This is our area where we have our greatest need. This is our area where the most is going to be happening, not just within the United States, but with our international partners over the next weeks, months, and years. This is an area that is an area where our nation is dealing with multiple risks at the same time, and we need to have the expertise necessary to detect, to prevent, to respond, and to respond effectively. And that is something I hope when you leave this lecture hall today, you will take with you as something to think about. Thank you very much. And now the question part of the program.
What do you see as the key lessons learned from the recent Stuxnet attack? And what can be done to ensure the secure and safe operation of industrial control systems and prevent similar incidents from happening in the future?
Yeah, well, Stuxnet was a challenging illustration of some of the concepts I laid out because it was aimed at controls and control systems. And when I talk about protection of critical infrastructure, part and parcel of that is protecting their control systems from attack and manipulation. I think that some of the systems we're deploying now ultimately, over time, will be very helpful on the detection and prevention aspect of this. But the key thing we learned from Stuxnet was the need for rapid response across the private sector. And there, we need to increase the rapidity of response because in that area, as in several other recent attacks, we've seen very, very sophisticated, very, very novel ways of attacking. And when you're getting at control systems, now you're really talking taking things over. So this is an area of key concern for us.
What role, if any, does public opinion and pressure play in the decisions you make and the activities of your department?
Some. No. Let me answer it this way. Look, one of the reasons we have built privacy protections and have lawyers sitting with the technical staff at the NSA where we have individuals stationed is because we understand and embrace and the notion that there are real values at issue here. And, we have always viewed our government as having limitation, and limitation where your expectations of privacy are concerned. And that has to be expressed in how we manage our affairs in cyberspace. And so if that's public opinion affecting how we manage and how we are managing the role we've been assigned in protecting cyberspace, then that's an important thing. So that's part A of the answer. Part B, of course, is we're always dealing with the media, and it's a 24/7 environment there. It never stops. They always need to be looking for something to fill that valuable airtime. And so we do spend some of our resources making sure that the information we give out is accurate, making sure it's timely, trying to provide corrections when corrections are called for, trying to bring to the attention of reporters when they've taken things perhaps out of context or without seeing the whole picture. And so that has an impact as well. Both on how we make sure that from the outset we are embracing our fundamental values and in making sure that we are proactively dealing with the media, those all have impacts throughout the system.
In times of budget pressure, how does DHS balance commercial interests as a driver of cybersecurity spending with actual threat assessment? So he says, parenthetically, I'm imagining a $250 lock on a $50 bicycle. So I think they're trying to talk about whether the solution is more expensive than
the threat.
Yeah.
Yes. We always, there's a very simple XY axis here, right? Risk and consequence. What is the level of risk, meaning potential that something will happen, and what is the consequence should it occur? So on the one hand, I will use a nuclear detonation as an example. The potential of that is very, very low, but of course the consequence is very, very high. And so we deploy radiation detectors and so forth at ports and the like because of where it sits on the XY axis. And so as we look at where do we invest, or that is kind of the judgment that gets made. What is the probability? What is the consequence? And as you think about things and put things in a framework, that helps you figure out where the dollars are going to be. But we also, we work with the private sector. We hope that, as in all things technology related, as you get into working a problem and as technology evolves, costs come down. and that helps as well.
The next question says, so it picks up on your comment on social networks. It says, how is DHS collaborating with social networking organizations such as Facebook and Twitter to help identify and tackle new cyber threats?
I don't know if collaboration is the right word, but we clearly, in all of our activities, are now using social networks like Facebook and Twitter to alert people to threats as they occur, be it threats from a terrorist, another something that is man-caused, it may not be attributable to a terrorist type of attack, or Mother Nature, and making sure that people get their information in different ways now, and in multiple different ways. And so what we're trying to do is get our information out in the ways that people receive information, not just in one way. So if that's a collaboration, that's the kind of collaboration that we have and seek to foster. It's also, by the way, when I said we are seeking creativity and new ideas, this is an area that is ripe for lots of creative approaches. How do you find out about things as they occur? How do you validate the information that you are receiving? How do you keep updated on that information? How do you do it if some of your standard means of communication are no longer available? And you have to rely on a backup sort of network or system. I will give you an example, not cyberspace, Dean, related, but earthquake related. In a couple of weeks, we're going to do a major earthquake exercise in the Midwestern United States along what's called the New Madrid Fault. And it will simulate, on an exercise basis, a major earthquake. We planned this well before Japan, but part of the exercise is that you have to assume no electricity and no telecommunications for the first 36 hours. In other words, those have been disabled. All right. How do you get information? How does an individual receive information? Where do you drive them to? How do you keep people updated? How do you keep your first responder community in communication with each other? How do you work with your healthcare facilities, your shelter facilities, any critical infrastructure that could be impacted, like a nuclear reactor? All of those questions have to be answered in an environment where the things you would normally rely upon are no longer reliable. And so now you have to look at the variety of systems out there in the world used for communication and ascertain what would people be driven to and how could they best receive information even as you try to reestablish the communications systems that existed prior to the disaster. We have some ideas. We're putting those into effect, but this is an area, like I said before, ripe for creativity, ripe for innovation, and for which there is a huge ongoing need.
There are a ton of very interesting questions, but this will be the last one. It's also the most provocative of the ones that I still had here. So what happened to the discussion? It says, the question is, what happened to the discussion about the internet, quote, kill switch that might be used in cases of, within quotes, extreme emergencies?
Ah, yes. That will, as I think I think there's a very good chance that Congress will take up cyber legislation this year. And the Senate looks like it's beginning to coalesce. The House has some real interest in this. Everybody knows that in this area that from a governmental perspective is still in its infancy. There's need for kind of an overall statutory approach that in large part will confirm, I think, the division of roles and responsibilities that I've described for you this afternoon. The idea of an absolute internet kill switch, I'm not sure how much potency it has legislatively, but I think, Dean, it will be part of the dialogue and discussion and to and fro's that will happen in the discussion of any proposed cyber legislation this year. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary Napolitano. It's now time for this event to conclude. Let me share with you a modest token of thanks with you for speaking to us today. It's certainly in keeping with federal gift rules.
Excellent, thank you. I'll wear the crown.
Welcome to the Cal Berkeley. I'd like to thank Provost Breslauer and our guests for attending today's presentation. I'd like to thank our student group, the Society of Women Engineers. There are lots of the volunteers back there in the audience here for co-sponsoring today's event. A video of this talk will be available by next week. And to access the video, please visit the College of Engineering homepage. Thank you very much for joining us all today.
Thank you all.
And go Bears. Thank you very much again.
Go Bears.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
That was
very
a great
much.
talk.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about the Killswitch question.
No.
I think they would like to pose with you.